So let's look at some of those objects that I just explained with the cards. We'll look at them in the code. This is a super patch. It's my Digital Media 2018 UCF super patch. I worked on this. I've been elaborating on this. It's originally by David Tinapple at ASU, so some of the credit goes to him. And I've posted this on web courses, and we will be updating this patch as we go throughout the semester. It'll be kind of like my collection of examples for you guys. Anything in here is free game for you. You can copy and paste this into your projects if you want to. I actually don't recommend copying and pasting, but like opening it up, looking at it, and then retyping it or coding it into your own patch, that helps solidify the processes in your brain versus just cutting and pasting stuff. And nothing in here is going to be so long that it's going to like take you more than a minute to type up just looking at it. Okay. So in our basics column over here, we've got the a subpatcher for metronome. So with these things, let me just make this full screen. Okay, if I double click on them, they will open up. And so we've got a little subpatcher menu, and I'll just point out a few things here. We've got our metro object with 500. So this metro, instead of being once every 3 seconds, is going to be once every half a second. Yeah. 1,000 is 1 second. I've got a toggle box up here to allow me to turn the metro on and off. You see it's not really doing anything right now. And then right here I've just got a bang button that's going to give me some visual feedback on to what it's doing. For me to interact with this stuff, Max has a few states it can be in. One of them is whether the patch is locked or unlocked. When the patch is unlocked, I can drag stuff around. I can go in and change things, like making that once every 5 seconds. And this is in edit mode is how I write the code. When I want to actually interact with stuff, right, like I want to turn this toggle on and see what it does, I have to lock the patch so it becomes into like UI mode. And the little lock icon is down here. And I click that, and you'll see that those like borders around stuff go away. So I can't click anything to move it anymore. But I can now interact with the elements. So I can turn the toggle on and see the metro putting out a bang every half a second. I can also use Command E as a shortcut for locking and unlocking the patch. You also notice that when I'm locked, several of the menu options go away. Like all these things at the top are ways for me to quickly add things like a toggle button or a comment to my patch. QMetro is something we'll use for video. I'm not going to get into it right now. The other thing I can do, right, so you'll notice Metro has 2 inlets on the top and 1 outlet on the bottom, right? So the outlet is what's giving me the series of bangs. This second or right inlet lets me adjust what that number value for the metro is. So if I type in 1,000 into this number box and hit enter, the metro slows down to being once every second. If I then go back and type in 200, it's going to start going even faster, right?
So what happens if you type like 2?
2, yeah. So because of how this bang button works, it's going to look like it's just on pretty much steady, right, and just flickering kind of sporadically, because 2 is faster than the way this object is programmed to show its light up state.
And what's the point of having the metro? Like, couldn't you just change the number in the metro directly? Like,
yes, right, I could. But if I want the rate of the metro to change, perhaps dynamically because of how someone is interacting with the code, I can do that, right? If I hard code it into here and I don't have this box, it's always going to be half a second, right? Okay. But maybe I want, well, when someone clicks this button, I want it to go into double time, right? And so I could do that.
Okay, so the 500 is the standard.
Great observation, right? So the number I type in here is going to be like when you open up the patch, when you turn it on, that's what its default.
Default, yeah.
and then I can override that default if I want to. Yep.
So we have an input device, be it a Connect that senses a person in proximity, and that proximity would be that 200 up there. And as they move away from and closer to, that will automatically
It gets faster or
change
slower.
that and change our variable of how it interacts with who's looking at it.
You got it. You got it.
And I don't think you even need a Connect to do that. You can,
Well, it was an example.
Right.
We could program like any camera to do that within Max.
Yeah, but that's a great line of thinking to be on. Like, what information can I capture about the world around my piece? How can I quantify that information into a numerical value? And then can I use that to drive a parameter of my code? All right, so I'm going to turn that one off and close that little patch. So then the next one is numbers. Let's look at numbers a little bit. Numbers come in the number or integer type and the flow-num or float type. Integers are our whole numbers, positive and negative. And you notice what I did just there, I clicked and dragged this box, the number box, and that allows me kind of like to scrub or slide the value of it. I can also type in something. While I'm typing, you'll notice it doesn't output anything. When I hit enter, it's going to send out the new value. Okay? So if I try to give a number box, an integer, a decimal place value like 42.5, it doesn't round, it truncates. So it just chops off the decimal. So it gives me 42. If I send it a set message like set25, it's going to change the value here like I had typed it in but had not pressed enter. So it hasn't actually sent that value through the stream. These little chords, I should mention, these are our patch chords, right? I think I mentioned that the guys that invented Max came from music, and they were used to using synthesizers that had patch chords, right? So when we save a Max file, we call it a patch. It's a collection of chord connections. We use these virtual patch chords to connect different objects together like you would with a synthesizer. Flow-num works very similarly. I can give it a decimal place number. It will understand that. How I click and drag in it is a bit different. If I click on the left side of the decimal, it gives me full integer value changes. If I click on the right side of the decimal, it will give me decimal place changes. Okay.
Up to 2 point, or can you alter that?
In terms of like the significant digits,
Not that it matters.
Yeah. I think it defaults to 2, but you can adjust that as well. Yeah.
Now right click on any one of your boxes.
If I right click in locked mode, it's not going to do anything. If I unlock it, it's going to give me a little paste contextual mode.
Now I double
Yeah.
tapped inside and a huge dialog popped up.
Oh yeah?
How did I do that? It gave me this laundry list of like hundreds of options.
Yeah, so there might be some different things there. I guess we can look at some of those. Now, this is a bit more advanced stuff. You might not get into this right away. But if I have an object selected, like this number box, I can go into my inspector over here, the I logo, and it will tell me a wealth of information about that object. Things like its color, does it respond to being clicked, where is it located in the screen, right? Its X and Y coordinates and its width and its height. Is it going to hide when I lock the patch? Is it in the background? Is it in presentation mode? I'll talk more about a lot of these things later on, but this is where you can adjust some of those things like how many significant digits of decimal place would you find that in the inspector. Versus the reference over here, which is going to tell you all of the things that are related to this object. So like what messages can you send to this number? What attributes does it have? Can you adjust? We'll look at attributes and messages again a bit later.
That's the third icon
Sorry?
Underneath information, right?
Yeah, it looks kind of like a book reference. And then the other one here that is important is this max console, which I've been using this whole time. Let me clear it real fast with this X. And this is where I can print things to. So you'll see this print object down here. And what's that saying is just take whatever you give me and print it to this console. So this is very helpful for debugging, right? If I want to see what something is seeing, this is how I can do that. So if I say 37, it's going to say print 37. Okay, great. So I know that the 37 went from here to here to here because I can't see what's actually in the chords, right? So this is a way for me to kind of have a peek into
To see
the
whether or
patch.
not they are connected.
And if the value that I think is going through them is actually going through them. We'll look at some interesting cases in a moment. All right, so math is rather straightforward. We've got objects like plus, minus, multiply as an asterisk, divide as a slash, modulo as a percent sign. So like Metro, I can put in a default value here, 100. So if I put in here a 5, I get 105. If I put in here a 5, I get negative 95.
And I
Okay.
can tab between fields.
Can I? No.
Oh, and edit.
Some interesting things, right? Also like Metro, the second inlet here lets me dynamically change that value, right? So right now, if I say 30 minus 10, I get 20. If I change the left one though, let's say I say it's going to be 5, and I hit enter, nothing happens, okay? So this sets the value. It does not force a calculation. Only the first inlet forces the calculation. And that is indicated here by the color of the inlets. So it might be hard to see on the projection, but the first one is red. This one is blue. Red means it's hot. It triggers calculations or sends stuff out when it gets information there. So if I type in 20 now here, I'll get 15.
Does that matter?
Because I've overwritten the 10 with the 5.
Okay.
And so it's not going to show that, but that object, that minus object now knows it's a minus 5, not a minus 10.
Oh, okay.
If I type in another value, we'll go back to 30, it's going to give me 25. I can make this a 2, nothing happens. I make this a 10, it's going to give me 8.
So it's more of a bypass.
How's that?
Because it's not going straight down to the 10, it's just kind of following the lead.
It's a reset. Yeah, you're giving it a new variable. It's like saying this is a minus something object. It's default minus 10. I can change that by altering the left inlet. If I give you a new value on the left inlet, you're now a minus 5. You're now a minus 2.
So in this case, the 10 will just directly minus the 2.
Mhm.
Can I
Instead
set
of
this
the-
up to where two users are using this interface and one person sees one aspect of this and another person sees another aspect of this, so they're both punching in numbers and they both think they're doing it right and all the answers always come out wrong?
Probably. Probably. So this can get us into, with minus, we can get into a special case where you might not want to subtract 10 from a number. You might want to always subtract a number from 10. With addition, right, it doesn't matter which side of the equation you're on because you're always getting the sum. With subtraction, the side matters. So the exclamation point minus object does that. So exclamation point minus 1, for instance, is always taking 1, subtract whatever value I get in from that. So if I put in for here, for instance, a 0.2, what's it going to give me? 0.8. Because it's always going to be 1 minus whatever you tell me. If I give it a 0.7, what's it going to be? Yeah. That comes up in some special cases. Expressions, I'm not going to talk about. Shortcuts, I will. So when you're how do you make these objects, right? To make a new object, you just type n, and you get this new object. You have to know what object you want to make, though, because then you just type it in there. So I want a print object, I type in print, now I've got a print object. If I type in n and I get it wrong, like check, it doesn't know what that is, right? So it turns orange, and you'll see an alert in your Max console too, and it will say new object check, no subject object. Okay.
Is there a list for us to know?
Right. There is like infinite objects in Mask, which is why I'm giving you this super patch, because this will have almost everything you need,
Okay.
or I will tell you the things that you need to do the small assignments, and then as you start using the language more, you'll pick up other objects as you go along. I can delete things just by clicking on them and hitting the delete key. Comment box, C is the shortcut for that. For these number boxes, I can type I. Oops, not in my comment. Over here, I get an integer. F is for a float. I can also, those are actually objects. They look a little different. So if I hit N for new object and type number, it will give me a number box. It will convert it into that stylized form. That bang button is B. Toggle. Excuse me. Right. It'll take you a little while to remember these, but it makes it much faster, right? But like I said, any of them, if you remember the name, and I type in toggle into a new object, it'll make that. So knowing n is new object is the most important one. In terms of that, right, as long as I'm unlocked, a number of these have the shortcut up here too. The new object button, a message, a comment, a toggle, some interface elements, right? They're all up there too. I can click and drag to select multiple things. Let me keep going. A few more things before we get into putting these together. Messages. Messages are cool. They're a bit like strings, if you're familiar with other programming, it's how you can work with words, but also numbers at the same time. It's kind of like a variable box. The shortcut for that is M, and I can type whatever I want in there.
Messages is something that just for an annotation of what this is going to do.
That would be a comment. That's a comment, like these like flyouts I have here are comments. The messages is like that, but it can also interact with the rest of the program. So it's got an inlet, it's got an outlet, right? So for instance, this anything message. If I send a bang to this message and under the print, watch what happens over here. It tells me anything, okay? So it knows that message was triggered. Yeah.
Okay, so this message is more for the audience, or
it can be.
okay.
It can also be for the code.
Okay.
Well, we'll get there.
Okay.
We will get there. So I can also use these messages as UI elements, right? So this is a button, right? I want someone to click anything. So if I click anything, it's also going to print out anything, right? So it's sending the anything along. I can use this special variable $1, which is going to say, give me this message. My name is blank, where blank is whatever came into my first inlet. That's what the 1 is for. It's for the first inlet. So for instance, if I click this by itself, I get my name is 0. That value is empty. If I click John, my name is John. My name is Paul. My name is Ringo. My name is George. I can send it a number. My name is 7 of 9. No one wants to start trying
Okay,
to
one question. So My name is $1. That's a default, right?
It's a placeholder.
Okay.
$1 is like a placeholder for incoming content.
Okay.
What if you want to broadcast the value of money in a sentence or something?
Ah.
Just put a dollar sign with a
Dollar
sentence.
sign? $.
That's a good question. That's a good question. We can try it.
Just put dollar sign right there.
To connect things, I click the outlet and drag it over to the inlet. My name is Money. Now, we've got a special behavior. Let me actually add in a print here so we can see this behavior at work. So in this example, I've got a number box here, but it's going to the left or the right inlet of the message box. So if I change this number, is it going to print?
I don't think so.
No, but it sets the message to that value. So anything coming into the right inlet of the message is going to change the message. The message is like a box of content, and you change it with that right inlet, but it doesn't pass the value along until it's clicked. Okay, now it's 7. So, like in this example down here, if I connect my number to both inlets, it will do both operations. So now it changes the box and prints it.
Okay, so one is printed and another one is not. When you put the A in both.
Right, because I'm not connected to this first inlet. Again, look, so the color's red, the color's blue. So only messages to the red inlet cause it to send output.
Okay.
If it doesn't get the red inlet, it's not going to send anything.
Okay.
I can also concatenate messages or put multiple messages together with a comma, but it will treat them as separate messages. Okay? So we've seen, like, I can have spaces in a message. It still treats this as one thing. My name is George. That's one message. But with a comma, it's now 2 different messages. I get
okay.
one in cat.
Okay, come out at one time.
That can be trippy. In this case, because it looks like all this ever got was cat, right? Where'd the 1 go? And what's happening is it is first setting it to 1, and then it is at computer speed instantaneously replacing it with cat.
Oh, so the cat overrides
Yeah.
the 1. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a random question.
Yeah.
So, the little, like the words that came next to cat, who wrote those words?
I did.
Okay, because separate is spelled
Thank you.
That's all.
I just noticed that. I was like, I don't think the computer would.
That's the comments function.
Yes.
Okay.
That is one of the words.
The
I always
first
spell.
separate is also.
There's 2 separates. Ah!
And separate.
Well, it's one of those
Separate.
words like.
Yeah.
Five others.
Okay. Those are our messages. Now, let's say I forget what an object does. In edit mode, if I've got an object selected, I can right-click on it. That'll bring up this little contextual menu. The first thing is Open Print Help. And that will bring me up an actual sub-patcher that will explain what the object does. It will have examples. You can try different things to see what it does, right? It's showing me I can give the print thing a name, like print argument. If I look at my Max window now, it says argument instead of print. So I can differentiate a bang coming from here, which is just print, versus a bang coming from argument. Okay? And any number of other things that print does. So this is the help patches that come with Max is one of the best ways to learn advanced features of the language when you're trying to do something with like route or counter and like I want it to go from 1 to 10. Mosher said that was possible. Let me look at the help patcher.
Crap, which one did I just push? So it just helps you visualize differentiation testing.
Where did you get to that?
And you get to that by right-clicking and say open. The very first thing is always going to be whatever the help file is for that object. And almost everything in Max has a help file. So here's all different things I can do with messages.
That's